listening to Tonebender's Sound Design Podcast, presented by Sound Ideas. This is the show where we talk with the sonic artists behind our favorite films, games, and series. If summer has your next project heating up, Sound Ideas is making it easier to build up the library you'll need. During the Sound Ideas mid-year sale, you can save 50% on all proprietary items. From impacts and ambiances to vehicles, animals, machinery, production elements, and specialty effects, you can stock up on these professional sounds before your next deadline hits. Get ahead of the edit with sounds ready for any scene, transition, texture, and any surprise that may come your way. Shop the 50% off mid-year sale now at sound-ideas.com. Hello and welcome to Tonebenders. I am Tim Muirhead, and I'm currently busting my butt to get everything ready for Sound Day LA. If you're in the LA area on August 9th, this is an event you won't want to miss. Sound Day LA will be a full afternoon of panel talks and deep dives with the sound teams behind some of my favorite shows, including Stranger Things, The Pit, Spider Noir, Widow's Bay, Pluribus, Hacks, Shrinking, DTF St. Louis, and more. Mark Mangini will be our special guest host. There will be raffles for some great sound-related prizes, as well as food and coffee breaks throughout the day to hang out with your sound colleagues. If you're not in Los Angeles, all the talks will be coming out on the Tonebenders and In-Depth Sound Design feeds following the event. But if you can make it, register now. The response already has been overwhelming and it's filling up fast. Use the link in the episode description in your podcast app to claim your spot now. Big thanks to Sound Day LA's event sponsor, Remoto Playback. Pitch-perfect remote review sessions without a monthly subscription. Go to remotopro.io to learn more. Okay, let's get to my main interview for this episode with the key members of the sound team from the massive hit film, Backrooms. We have the location sound mixer, Jan Hedmer, and supervising sound editor / re-recording mixer, Eugenio Battaglia. This is Eugenio's third time on Tonebenders after previously appearing to talk about Long Legs in episode 272 and Heretic in episode 287. He's becoming a master of horror sound, and it's great to have him back. This was my first time talking with Jan, so it was great to meet him as well. So let's get to it. Here's my talk with Jan and Eugenio from director Kane Parsons' Backrooms. Welcome, Jan and Eugenio. Working on a show like Backrooms, it's got to be super intimidating because there's so much sound in it, but it's not the kind of sound that I think a lot of regular film goers are expecting. Like, it's not explosions and, spaceships pass by, but like especially the scenes taken from the video camera's perspective, they're so full of sound. Jan, maybe if you want to go first, you want to talk about what it was like being on set for those and how you captured stuff. It must have been a hell of a trick with so much space being covered.
It's been definitely one of the most challenging projects I've ever worked on. There's no doubt about it. Because that we've been doing things in different ways than I'm maybe used to. Or
do you want to talk about the use of lavs versus booms? Because I'm assuming booms just were out of the question for a lot of these shots.
No, you would be surprised. Yes and no. It's for those wide shots, then it's been definitely wires or radio mics, whichever way you prefer to call them, but came out with on the plant mic on the camera attached. There are some scenes with heavy dialogue where we use a boom a lot, even though there's been 14, 18 millimeter lenses, which means very wide on actor's close-up. So there's always like minimal headroom, like 2-3 feet. Luckily, I think the microphone I picked for that, my favorite for dialogue was some Sennheiser 8050 that covered that stuff very well. And then the wide shots where I was like, okay, we'll go to CMIT, but they were just too wide. So I think for those super wides, I ended up using CS3, Sanken CS3. Then lavalier mics were my favorite, DPA's 6060, tiny ones.
Eugenio, do you want to talk about the sounds that you got from Jan? And were you ever using the plant mic that Jan mentioned?
Yeah, I used it was pretty interesting because he did give me a lot of perspectives. Sometimes plant, sometimes the boom from, even if it was like a distant boom, I found that it would capture very interesting reverberations. Anything that I could grab that would give me like a sense of like depth or angle, I thought it was interesting. And even if it's like the source audio is not something that I would use for the dialogue, just to hear that echo there, I would use it to maybe copy the reverb profile and use it so that I could match sounds better to the rooms, to the long hallways or corners or etc. It was mostly labs for sure. We also had a fair share of ADR. I think it was pretty handy to have all these different perspectives, like I said, so that I can give that realism to all these sources. It was not like conventional. It wasn't just like boom and lab. So many different sources. It kind of like allowed me to play with the room.
It's an interesting movie that you say that it was not conventional, because nothing about this movie is conventional. So I'm glad that the sound work wasn't conventional either. That makes perfect sense. When I watched the credits of the film roll down, the sound team was actually really small. Yourself as supervising sound editor and re-recording mixer, another re-recording mixer, and then just 2 sound editors were listed, as well as Foley and Loop Group and such. But that's a small team for a film with so much sound. Maybe if we could go around for both of you to talk about your team and how you managed to cover the ground you did with the size of team you had.
Yeah, totally. So this team is a team that I've been working with already on a bunch of films. I think we've gotten used to being under pressure and being able to deliver fast. So I'm just pretty comfortable with them. Like, there's not a lot of back and forth that needs to happen. Real quick, my Foley team, Javier Perez, him and Enrique did my Foley. I mentioned to you before in past interviews, Foley is like my favorite thing. I definitely worked pretty closely with them. They already kind of know that I like the Foley to be kind of like louder than usual, a little bit more juicy. I like to exaggerate the perspectives, the Foley. Sound effects team is Humberto Corte, who also does all the hard effects in my films. And he's also pretty accustomed to be under fire, try to deliver quick, but with tons of quality. The secondary recording mixer was Gregor Phillips, who I've also worked on movies before. He actually used to be my mentor a long time ago. And so I feel like because we've already had a synergy between all of us, it was pretty easy to kind of like just be in sync and then just jump and tackle it. I also find it that like jealous about my sound, but I am so excited about doing as much as I can. And this film, to me, I was already a big fan of the series. And so to me, it was kind of like a dream project because I had already followed the entire YouTube series. When I get to that level of excitement on a project, I just want to do everything. So I jumped in very early on the rough cuts, just trying to help the editorial team with assets and materials and like try to help to achieve like a level of quality that would be good for the test screenings or just to experiment. And so by the time we hit locked, I had already kind of like established a little bit of the sounds, and so it was easy for me to just kind of like jump on it and do the sound design, supervise it, mix it as I went. And so I feel like if I had a different team, I would need a bigger team. But I was just very into this film. And I just wanted to put as much work as I could, even on my free time.
You're based in Vancouver. Is everybody else on your team Vancouver-based?
Yeah, everybody's Vancouver-based.
Yeah, and do you want to talk about your team?
My team was myself and my boom operator, Robert Booth, as we have been given for this project to be a 2-man team on set. No extra sound assistant or utility person, as this had been quite a bit shot as a kind of low budget, because the overall budget is 10 million, but they spend lots of money on building the stages. You know, how many? 3,000 square foot? Been like full 4 stages of all these empty backrooms. So lots of construction and obviously lots of post-production visual effects. So that's why I was apparently tighter on budget for shooting. So just 2 of us.
So I recently got to interview Gary Rydstrom, and he talked about his like super long working relationship with Steven Spielberg, who's directed like 70 movies or something ridiculous like that. This is what you just went through is kind of the exact opposite end of the spectrum. The director of this film is a young man who has made all these Backrooms series, but they were made in a different way through Blender. Do you want to talk about how much he knew about the sound process for a project of this level? Maybe Eugenio, do you want to take that first?
Kane is actually a really good sound designer. He definitely learned through trial and error. Didn't go to sound school or hasn't done any professional sound before, but I think that kind of gives him an edge. Like basically, the way he manipulates sound is a way that I haven't seen anybody else.
Oh, wow.
He uses FL Studio. He abuses the master, like crushes it, like the way he puts pitch shifters, and then I don't even know how to start. Like the chain that he does, the way of how he does it, how he thinks, and how he masters it. It's so wildly different from anything I've ever learned. The challenge actually was for me to be like, wow, that's incredible. I kind of want to learn how to do that, to kind of learn from him. The limitation for him is that he lives in the found footage world. So he's confined to that sonic space, which arguably is the most fresh part of the movie. The more cinematic parts is something that I'm more used to, and that he would definitely have to rely on my expertise to make it sound like a movie. Because of his self-taught nature, he understood every technical aspect of, for example, like compression or gate or reverberation or like wet versus dry, even mixed theory. So he was very adamant that he wanted the fan footage to remain mono, and he also understood that there's space to open it up to stereo a little bit, where I took that and I translated it to open it up to Atmos a little bit, but the idea was to stay mono. So it was pretty awesome for me to be able to collaborate with someone that I respect as a sound designer.
That's amazing to hear. Jan, what was he like working with on set?
Kane for me was one of the most humble, if not the most humblest person on the set. Honestly, it's been really a pleasure to working with somebody who has big fan base already on YouTube. He's well known. We had a couple people following him while we were shooting, I heard, or some paparazzi, and guys so just dialed in and and humble and really jump on anyone while they were talking. Just just very respectful and nice person. One of the nicest director I ever worked with, I have to say.
Wow, that's amazing to hear.
Yeah.
So let's break down into some specific scenes. Let's maybe start at the beginning, the start, which is a found footage scene that's all from the perspective of the camera, but kind of a perspective of the character that we're not even sure who it is. It sounds absolutely fantastic. It's one of my favorite opening scenes in a movie I've seen in a really long time. Do you want to break down how you tackled that? And I guess it's kind of crazy because there's no music as well.
That first scene was all built in Blender, and then we did ADR for it. Yeah, I struggled a little bit with that one because obviously it was required to be impactful. But at the same time, it was also my first found footage. I hit a hard wall with the limitations at the beginning where it's like, okay, wow, I have to stay mono. I have to fuzz it so that it sounds like a camera, meaning I lose all the bass. I have to not rely on music. Like, I don't remember the last time a impactful intro in a movie was musicless. It was a lot of limitations, but thankfully, like, he already had like established the sound. If you hear his YouTube videos, they're quite tense, so I just rewatched them. I tried to get inspired by it, and then I found that a lot of the tension that you feel on this found footage videos, or like analog horror in general, which is like like the newest horror trend, comes from like imperfection. And so I found that if I have all these limitations, I have no bass, I'm staying mono, no music. So it's like, okay, let's leave in the camera. Everything is a little bit garbled. Because of that, you are able to mangle the audio in ways where you wouldn't be able in the cinematic sense. So, for example, we're listening to the camera through a microphone, right? So if you play the microphone as if it was really sensitive or really hot, then you're able to bring the noise floor up and down very aggressively. And so that, to me, that kind of like sense of unstable chaos, like you have no control over the volume. It's as if I have my hand on the master fader and I'm just randomly moving it up and down. And I found that to be extremely tense. And so basically we played with the idea that if it's a microphone that's really sensitive, when the camera pans around or when there's a really loud bang or a sound, the microphone reacts to it and it kind of like clips or dampens. So it's essentially the opposite of the cinematic world where like the camera is static. You basically rely on silence to generate tension. You kind of lean forward trying to like hear, and then you scare them with a jump scare or whatnot. Where here is like if the camera is static, then the noise floor starts to come up because the microphone is, you know, doing its thing. It's picking up the noise floor. Where if it turns around, it just immediately breaks or it dampens. And so to me, that actually felt really fresh. And so that with the combination that as when shit hits the fan, I guess, you're able to cheat the sound, like I mentioned earlier, where you can start opening up the sound to be wider, more in the Atmos space. And so if you do it in a subtle way, you don't notice that you're breaking the rule of fan footage, and you can sneak in some sound design that essentially works like music, but without it being too musical. Keeps you so engaged on this weird garbled noise that it comes up and down that it's very easy to hide sound design or jump scares. And by the end of it, I was actually pretty pleased with it and surprised because I was the thing that I was the most worried about, basically, the fan footage.
Big shout out to Eugenio. He did a really amazing job on the sound design. It was such a nerve-wracking just be sitting there on my first cruise screening, even though I knew the story. It's just a big part of it was Eugenio's sound design. So
I would say you nailed it because I was crapping my pants in the theater while those scenes were happening. That done really, really well. Jan, do you want to talk about how you ended up on this film? Are you Vancouver-based as well?
yes, I'm Vancouver-based, Canada. I work with this production company before with the Chris Ferguson and his team on a movie called The Monkey that's based on Stephen King's novel. And then I've done a couple movies before with them.
Yeah.
This one was the following movie the production company was working on. So I was fortunate to be around still.
Jan, how do you prep for a movie like this? Once you've seen the script and have an idea of what you're in for, did you prep differently than you would for...
One thing what I could do differently or what helped me was because we've done some test demo shoot prior to principal photography, which was approximately 4 or 5 months before. This is gonna be like lots of movements, a lot of Steadicam, a lot of handheld camera, a lot of wide lenses, sudden tilts, changes, running around. So that's when I figured, or on that test shoot, I came up with ideas, start putting a microphone on Steadicam. We really had to have a open-minded camera operator who let me to put it there, and just for on that test shoot, just like having a fun and trying to something new. And I'm like, wow. I figured like this is kind of working well because we already had scenes where we couldn't have a boom operator there. There's been lots of angled mirrors and stuff like that, and I never like to lean only on a wire lavalier microphone, or how do we call it here? We on a set we always call it here wires. So you guys in the post call it lavalier, lavs. Okay,
lavs, yeah, or lavs.
Yeah. Lavs. I never like to lean only on the lavs because it's kind of, it's boring. You have to keep maintaining the thing. It sounds like when you're listening to those things all day, like you're in a death chamber. Of course, it's a part of a job. Those techniques to put a lav mic on a person and keep it nice and clean. But I always like to bring perspective. I have a post-production background, and I always like to just play perspectives as well. So that's when I came up with this idea. I just can't be delivering all these scenes just with lavs. There were many times nowhere to put plant mic because they were just doing completely 360 in an empty room. The mostly microphone I was using on the camera was the DPA 4097, the little tiny shotgun, which is suspended, just attached on my electrosonic transmitter, and then I either Velcro it, bongo tied, or a little grip thing used on on the camera. Depends on their setup, right? Depends what they let me do. I haven't had many choices.
Eugenio, what about you for planning? When you're prepping your Foley team for a film that takes place almost entirely plot-based carpet, carpet doesn't really make a sound, but you said earlier about how you like putting the Foley forward. That makes it a challenge, I suppose.
Yeah, it's a bit of a challenge, but also I like to exaggerate a little bit of the sounds in horror, specifically analog horror, which is more licensed to exaggerate the analog aspect, of the camera or stuff. I think it also allows you to just exaggerate in general. To be inside of the back rooms, when I first talked to Kane, we came to the agreement while we were spotting that, it's more of a vibe. It has to give you like a feeling being in there. He mentioned that to him, the back rooms sound like warm and almost relaxing. Kind of like if you were just hanging out at your grandma's house. If you think about that, it's like, okay, maybe carpet doesn't have necessarily a sound, but like if you are in an old house, you hear the creak of floor a lot and you think, I don't know, in my mind, when I think about like grandma's house, I think about hanging out in the basement or things like that. And like Kane felt the same, where like it was important to hear an exaggerated amount of like creak. Mythology wise, he was also okay with making it sound hollow. So it's okay for the walls to sound hollow, the floor to sound hollow. It has to give you like a domestic house vibe, even though it's an office, but or like resembles an office. But that's kind of like the sonic palette that he's craving, like a homey carpet vibe. Thankfully, my sound team is, I think one of their fortes is creaks. They're really good at creaks, footsteps. Thankfully, Kane really enjoyed also the style of the exaggerated Foley. When we're exploring the back rooms, there's not a whole lot of dialogue. Bodies moving on empty spaces. So you kind of need something to anchor you, right? And so the only thing that you can hear, other than the extremely dreadful and oppressive humming of the lights, is just the bodies moving. So it was important to kind of like exaggerate that.
Speaking of lights, the first time we see the lights really go nuts in the store, he's watching TV at nighttime, and all of a sudden all the lights start flickering. The sound that you use for that is so awesome. It's like glass tinking instead. A lot of times in movies when we see lights go on and off, you get that big thunderous kind of ka-kong, ka-kong. But you went the opposite direction and had all this tinkling glass, this delicate sound, and it worked really well. It was fantastic.
Thank you. It always works to have a massive spot like because like your brain registers that and it's like, okay, yeah, movie light. Kane was also very particular with the lights. We did do a couple of them where, in general, he liked hearing more of the detail, the buzzing electricity going through them, or just like surges of electricity. That was the main thing that we had to do, and to respect kind of like the already established humming of them. But yeah, that kind of like flickery, like almost like if you were hitting the glass with your nails. Umberto Corte, my hard effects editor, he also came up with that. We liked it a lot. We thought it gave them a really particular sound that it made it really interesting, because later in the film, when you have all of them in the ceiling and you're able to move with the camera around them, and then you get to play with panning all of them around, it makes them a little bit more distinctive when they have a rhythmic aspect to them, other than just like that can get pretty smeared in the panning.
It's interesting that you're mentioning panning, because during the found footage sequences, the camera perspective, there's moments that it very much within the plot is calling for panning. There's a scene where the camera's on the table and he's trying to figure out where the voice is coming from. But if you're limited to mono in these situations, do you break it there and go nuts with panning, or do you keep it mono? What were the discussions on how to tackle that scene?
Yeah, so you're so limited to this mono. My mixing brain goes crazy for sure when I see something behind me or very pan to the right, and it's an element that doesn't ruin the story if you pan it, because you usually want to keep things in the center. But there are moments where you're like, oh, I would love to pan that, because it's not messing with the story. It will be a great thing. But here I would be like just blocked. Like, oh, I'm centered the whole time. So it was definitely frustrating. it is possible to kind of bend the rule a little bit when you start to feel the tension, because if you just start mono and then you lean into it, and as you start to hear drony sound design dread or the handling of the camera, we're so used to this digital clean sound that especially young generations when they hear static and VHS glitches and crackle and all of that, that's kind of like not really something they're so used to it. So it brings them a sense of like dread or fear, and it's something their parents are into it. So it's something, it's like a weird incepted memory, almost as if they remember that, but not really because they didn't live to through it. So when you have that type of sound, your mind right away goes like, okay, like that's creepy, and there in that kind of like distraction, I'm able to like quickly pan something or
Yeah.
throw something on the LFE where like you wouldn't have that on a camera, right? But like it's almost like a cheat, because once you start picking all these moments where you can garble the sound, then it's free for all. Within a glitch, you can pan anything the way you want, or you can put crazy sounds. It's very short windows, but if you use them correctly, they also work as a jump scare. So I thought it was pretty effective.
Jan, most of this film is one character roaming around the back rooms, but there's an excellent scene about halfway through the movie where our main character brings his employee and her boyfriend into the back rooms for the first time, and suddenly now you've got multiple mics up, and they're going into very confined tunnels. Do you want to talk about tackling those scenes?
That's a major break in the story. So for like these scenes, I always on the set try to do my production mix as best as possible, make it most fluent without unnoticeable changes, because I'm aware that my mix was usually used for a very quite a bit long time for editors, for dailies. So it's not sort of be just a building a puzzles when in what situation use the right microphone, so pre-tentatively thinking of it with the post-production, thinking what the guys in post will be using at what time, so trying to mix that puzzle in the right way. I think that's the key for me, just to have a plan already what's gonna work best in what moment, and if we are not able to get it on the other on these two weapons we have, lavs and the boom, then always try to put the plant mic there for in a good spot, just to get it for perspective, or just to have it a nice sounding kind of boom type of microphone. That's what I do usually prefer.
Eugenio, do you want to talk about the creature sounds in this film, because they're terrifying?
Another thing that Kane is used to do is creature sounds. He actually likes to do them himself. And so they have some sort of like altered humanity to them.
So wait, when you say he does them himself, do you mean vocally or he designs them himself?
No, vocally. Well, I mean both.
Both, yeah.
But like he records himself, which was super interesting to see him like switch from director to performer. Just set up the mic for him, and then as soon as you press, record, he just morphs into into beast mode and starts. You really feel the anguish, and he's just going at it. And so I was actually pretty worried about his throat, because every time he would do it, he would like not be able to like talk for a little bit. He would like break his voice a bit. And so I had a lot of stuff to play with. But Pirate Clark in the lore is like a still life, so it's basically kind of, it resembles Clark. And so it was important to have the creature sounds resemble Clark sonically. We had to take some of the lines from Chiwetel and pitch shift them so that they could sound similar. That was a bit of a challenge, but we found, especially at the end, when you see him last, you really can feel like kind of like this sad humanity to him. But we also needed like a monstrous sound.
Yeah, there's one specific monstrous sound that was really impressive when he starts eating.
Yes, it was one of the last things we were able to do, because we had a lot of sounds. We had pigs, we had like the basic kind of like troll sound, ogre sound, and like pitch down. And thankfully to me, I had seen a couple of videos of David Farmer talking about vocals on Lord of the Rings. He definitely inspired me to use camel sounds, which is something that I hadn't used before. Once we started working with the camel sounds, coincidentally, turned out that Kane noticed that sound as something he had heard before, and it resembled a creature from a video game that he loves, from Half-Life 2. He immediately decided to pick that as the sound, almost as an Easter egg. To me, it was super fresh. I had never used camel sounds. They're terrifying, especially when you pitch them. That was all for Parker Clark. And then for the Redhead, had a recording of my kid when he was like 7 months old. I think he was waiting for milk and he was crying. And so I just threw that, pitched it down a bit, added a little bit of pitch shift by a company of plugins that I love called Freak Show Industries. They do the wildest plugins out there. Yeah, instantly it was something that Kane also loved. Those were the two main ones that I would say are important to talk about.
That's amazing. So Kane is the director, the composer, and the creature voiceover artist for this film. That's crazy. He's covering a lot of territory.
Yeah, he's like a one-man band kind of thing.
Well, I guess literally before jumping to something of this scale, he literally was a one-man band. He did everything, right?
He would do everything. He would even record friends, alter their voices, or do them himself. He has a very clear vision that, like I said, is very left field for someone that has already been doing this. It's something I haven't really experienced before or seen on anybody else. And so that's why I think it has to do a lot with his success, is that it comes off as something really fresh, really, really unique, the way he does things.
Yeah, 100%. I couldn't agree more, yeah.
Well, thank you very much for talking to me today. I really enjoyed the film. I mentioned before we started rolling that one of my favorite films I've seen in a while. I have a weird relationship to horror, and Eugenio, you keep making me watch horror films to talk to you. I both love and hate it. It freaks me out. I buy into them so much, and then I'm stressed out of my mind. And then at the end, I love it because, that's what film's all about, is being immersed and having your emotions messed with. So thanks for your role in tormenting me, both of you. And hopefully we get to talk again soon. It was great to meet you, Jan, and great to see you again, Eugenio.
Yeah, tormenting you is my pleasure.
It was great to meet you, and thank you so much for having us.
Thanks to Jan and Eugenio for sharing their knowledge and their stories in that talk. I really enjoyed Backrooms, and it was great to hear how it all came together behind the scenes. Make sure you sign up for Sound Day LA with the link in this episode's description. If you're going to be in the LA area on August 9th, I've teamed up with In-Depth Sound Design and Mark Mangini to make this day one I don't think you're going to want to miss. Stay tuned, because Tone Benders is also about to go on a real run of fun episodes. My name is Tim Muirhead. Thanks for listening to Tone Benders. If summer has your next project heating up, Sound Ideas is making it easier to build up the library you'll need. During the Sound Ideas mid-year sale, you can save 50% on all proprietary items. From impacts and ambiances to vehicles, animals, machinery, production elements, and specialty effects, you can stock up on these professional sounds before your next deadline hits. Get ahead of the edit with sounds ready for any scene, transition, texture, and any surprise that may come your way. Shop the 50% off mid-year sale now at sound-ideas.com. Tone Benders is produced by me, Timothy Muirhead. Theme music is by Jim Guthrie. You can reach me via email through info@tonebenderspodcast.com. Follow Tone Benders on Instagram to stay on top of new episodes. If you like the show, you can help us out by spreading the word to your friends and colleagues, or leave us a tip. Just go to tonebenderspodcast.com and click support.